from Prague. I am going to be talking to you about getting yourself in order and finding your life's purpose. The two things should be going hand in hand with each other. It's not really enough to say to somebody, sort yourself out, get yourself together, get yourself in order, without having a reason why you're doing it. What I found is if you are living more on purpose, order kind of comes in the wake of that. It kind of follows naturally behind it. I think it was Nietzsche that said, if you have a big enough why, you can endure any how. Anthony Robbins said, you'll do anything if you have a good enough reason for it. So I'm going to go through with, quickly, and then we'll get into the Q&A section, just 7 guiding steps for finding your purpose. It's a big deal, finding your life's purpose. It's a big deal. And I think most people are living not on purpose. They're living off purpose. They're living effectively in a sort of a twitching, semi-conscious response to the blast of data, the overwhelming blast of data and signals that we're all subjected to daily. And it makes us easier to influence. It makes us easier to control. And it also, it evokes a situation where you're probably going to have weaker boundaries. So the first thing I would like you to look at if you're trying to find your life's purpose is you need to know to a better degree who you are. And if you're taking notes, and I suggest you do, the specific part of yourself that you need to be very, very conscious of is value. What do you value? Your values are not the same as the values of the people around you. We can often assume that they are, but then it can leave us with a bewildering sense of incongruence when we hear and see people act and talk in a certain way, and it's simply not congruent with our values. Just having an understanding of what your values are and that other people have different values engenders compassion, it engenders patience. To know what your values are, what I suggest everybody do, it's a really good exercise, a really good use of your time. And if you want an in-depth instruction on how to do this, head over to the other YouTube channel where I'm posting all the time now, which is Richard Grannon Philosophy. Get a list of values. There's lists online. You just go to your favorite search engine and put in values list. You get a huge list of values. You go through them all. And as you go in through them, let your eye just pick out that which resonates with you. And write down on a piece of paper, like this one, 10 that you like the look of. Of those 10, cut them down to 5. Like, what can you do without, but what can you not do without? This is the beginning of forming boundaries, by the way, is knowing the values in your life that you can't do without and writing them down. You will start to develop boundaries. You will start to develop a moral philosophy that will protect you and make it easier for you to make decisions in your life when you know who you are and what you stand for, when you know what's important to you and that which isn't important to you. I mean, an extended version of this, would you find out what your anti-values are and what you absolutely don't want any of in your life? Like, you have a very low tolerance for injustice or stupidity or, I don't know, self-indulgence, whatever it is for you. It's good to know that as well. But just for this exercise, you take a big list of values. Number 1, you choose 10. Number 2, you drop that down to 5. And then number 3, you put that 5 in order of priority. And then you write it down and you stick it somewhere where you'll see it. Could be on the bathroom mirror, could be on the fridge. There's no shame in changing it. There's no shame in moving the values around in priority. In fact, as you live, as you learn, and as you grow, your priorities and your values will shift. A thing that you might value today, you might go, oh, I'm all about freedom. And what you'll find is that actually after looking at freedom every day, you go, you know what? I think that was a value of mine from about 10 years ago, but I don't actually value that as much now. Instead, I value this other thing. When you have your values in place and you commit to living in accordance with them, you will naturally be self-assertive and you will naturally have boundaries. See, what we try and do is we try and go the back door to these solutions. And it's not your fault, my fault. It's kind of the ideological soup that we've been cooked in since birth. It's like, well, you need to assert yourself more. Well, hang on a second. What is myself? I don't even know who I am. Was any part of my education or upbringing about letting me know who I am? Assert yourself. What's that then? What is this magical thing called self? Can we even have a conversation about it before you tell me I have to assert it? It would be like me saying, drive that car. There's no car there. Which car, mate? Drive that car. You're like, oh, it's some weird psychological torture. What am I supposed to do? There's no car. And I've never driven before. Can I get some instruction, please? So if you're poor at asserting yourself, it's not your fault. Nobody's ever taught you to do it. Nobody showed you what self is. Nobody showed you what assert is. And if you don't have values, it's really hard to have boundaries. In fact, I would go so far as to say you don't have boundaries. If you don't know what your values are, you can't really have boundaries. What you can have is like a neurotic role play of what you think somebody with boundaries would look like. And so you end up, one, not you personally, one ends up looking very much like a child trying to ape the actions of what they think an adult would do. And I think that's what we have in the world now. I think that describes the majority of people. Purposeless, valueless, or worse, brainwashed into holding junk values as real values and aping the behavior of people long dead, thinking, oh yeah, this is what he would do, this is what she would do, this is what being an adult looks like. It's not coming from authenticity. It's coming from role play. It's coming from trying to embody avatars of our projections and hallucinations of how better people than us would have acted in the same situation. I'm not talking about politics right now, but maybe I slightly am. Number two, this one's a bit of an ego burn. We, and I include me in this, I am not coming down from the mountain going, I've discovered the source of everything is me in my little pants meditating and fasting all the time. I'm as much in this as you are, but we do need to look at brainwashing. We do need to look at the way in which the ideology that we've had pushed upon us since birth has affected our worldview. So if you want to find your purpose, there's a certain amount of stuff you're going to have to break through. There's a certain amount of stuff you're going to have to deconstruct. I mean, on the one hand, if you really want to live authentically, you're going to have to process intergenerational trauma, childhood trauma, and unprocessed emotions. That's the internal stuff. Thanks, everybody. And then on the outside of that, you're going to have to process the brainwashing that could be from politics. It could be from marketeers, because we're bombarded with marketing every hour that we're awake. And if they can find a way to sell you adverts when you're sleeping, they'll do it. Believe me, that's not hyperbole. That will be a reality within our lifetimes. And then you have films, and then you have Disney, and all of these things blur your ideas of the most important things in life. They blur your idea of what the purpose of life is, what love is, what death is, what health is, what friendship should look like, what your contribution to society should look like, or even whether you should have one, what you are owed, what you're responsible for, what your rights are. All of these things kind of just being bubbled away in an acidic stream of piss. That's a really gross image, but it's true though. So we have to think about the ways in which we've all been affected by brainwashing, whether it's overt and deliberate brainwashing, or the kind of thing that people will tell each other and tell children to comfort them and keep them protected from the world, which is not always, you know, sometimes that comes from good intent as well. It's not always people trying to push your vote, push a sale, push an ideology. Sometimes it's just misguided. It's just bad parenting or bad education that does it. So you want to find your purpose, consider intergenerational trauma, childhood trauma, unprocessed emotion. You're going to have to deal with that. Consider brainwashing. We're all brainwashed. I sit here before you saying, please deal with your brainwashing as a brainwashed person. And I haven't gotten it all out. I'm still on the daily thinking, oh, there's a thought that came in. This is how I think about this. Why do I think about that like that? you put that thought there. I don't think I put that thought there. I think somebody else put that thought there. And I don't like that thought there. That's brainwashing. That's ideology. It could be tribal consciousness. It could be education, religion, but it's not your thought and it doesn't serve you. Which brings us to number 3. And it will also bring us to number 4 and number 5. A lot of these things happen unconsciously. So we're going to talk a little bit about digging some of these things out of the unconscious, because they really block you from finding your purpose, which you think, oh, I found my purpose. That's wonderful. Oh, that's just the beginning of your torture. Then you have to live it. Then you have to live your purpose. And then you'll know. Then you'll know. Remember Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring? They go on a long journey to destroy evil in the land, and they're battered by the end of it. Living your purpose is tough, and it takes an awful lot of a peculiar kind of courage, because you'll be surrounded by people who are not living their purpose, and they're threatened by you living their purpose. So you'll get a little bit of what they say in corporate and political speak is pushback. You'll get some pushback. Nobody's going to help you do this. Nobody's going to help you shine. You can forget about that. So number 3, let's start thinking about the direction in which our lives are moving and what kind of intentions we've set. This is, to me, is more important than goal setting. I think the first time I heard goal setting being criticized was by Richard Bandler. And you'd think, well, he's a founder of NLP. That's kind of self-help and positive psychology. Why would he criticize goal setting? And what he suggested was that there's something slightly neurotic about setting goals, and actually that our brains don't function that way. What we do as humans is we set directions, and those directions have a multiplicity of goals and objectives to be hit. But if you focus on the objective, the attainment of a goal, it's kind of bound in time, and at some point it will be done, and then you'll be goal-less. And you only have to speak to like high-level athletes to know the kinds of psychological troubles that they can have once they went to the Olympics and they represented their country and they won gold, and then they're in a terrible depression, or they did the boxing match against the terrible opponent and actually won. And it can be the worst of all things, because that goal is a moment in time and it's attained. So think in terms of directions. What directions have you been moving in? Remembering, with all due humility, that unless we do something fairly drastic with a lot of emotional commitment and discipline, the last 10 years of our lives will probably be mirrored in the next 10 years of our lives. So if your last year sucked and you don't want to live it again, you're going to have to do something fairly dramatic, backed by a lot of emotion and very clear intention and a lot of discipline, to make sure that this year doesn't look exactly the same. Are you reading me? I hope that you are. It takes a lot to break patterns, because humans are repeaters. We repeat, we repeat, we repeat, we repeat, we repeat, we repeat. That's how intergenerational trauma functions. It's bound in the very way in which humans function in the world. It's bound up in our concept of time. It's bound up in our concept of language, and it's bound in our concept of stories and narratives. That's why we repeat unconsciously. It's easier. Even if it's hell on earth, even if it's torture, you'll repeat the mistakes of your parents, your authority figures, the people around you, because that's what we do. We're almost, in a certain sense, and this is Dawkins. Richard Dawkins was the guy who coined the word meme. Memes are not just funny pictures on Instagram. A meme, according to Dawkins, was his way of taking the concept of a gene and having it be reflected mentally. That's why it's called a meme, because it's like a gene, but it's a mental or psychological gene. And it propagates, it repeats. That's its job, is to repeat. So then from that you have ideas around mimetics, where the things are repeated again and again and again. It's very natural for us to do this because, you know, according to Dawkins' idea with the selfish gene, In a certain sense, we are the sock carriers of genes. I don't believe that. I'm not saying that. Let's keep it with Dawkins' perspective as good philosophers. Let's hold this idea for a second. So his idea is that we're kind of the carriers of genes, but in another sense, psychologically, that reflects that as above, so below, according to the Hermetic principles, we are also the carriers of memes. So it's very normal for us, the most natural thing in the world for us to be repeaters of bad or good patterns of behavior, to be repeaters of language, to be repeaters of stories, to be repeaters of intergenerational trauma. It's the most natural thing in the world. In a certain sense, that's what we are, that's what we do, that's what we've evolved to. And so we have to be very careful of things like ideas that are parasitic, because we are susceptible to them. We have to be very careful of ideological infection that can become ideological possession. We have to watch out for it because we have a vulnerability, which is carrying mimetic code unconsciously. Hey, that got a bit heavy and a bit deep. Let's wind it back. Focus on your direction. What direction have you been living in for the last 5-10 years? Be objective, be cruel, be honest with yourself. You've got a chance here. There's a window of opportunity for you to bite the bullet and go, you know what, that's a bit crap. What direction have you been moving in with your health? What direction have you been moving in with your love life? What direction have you been moving in with your career? What direction has your life been going on? And what intentions have you set? And you might go, well, I've not set any. Unfortunately, not setting an intention is an intention, because if you're not intending to do anything, you're kind of setting the intention to be an open jellyfish that will go with the flow. Very susceptible to ideological infection, very susceptible to other people's ideas, very susceptible to narcissistic abuse, very susceptible to emotionally abusive relationships. Because if you're a passive jellyfish, you don't have any boundaries. You just go with the flow and let people do and say whatever they want. This is not a good state to be in. Part of the brainwashing says, yes, it's great. Just float along in life. Let it happen. It's not even real. That's what Vedic philosophy teaches. I do yoga, so I'm right on and groovy. No, you're going to get fucked. Sorry, excuse my French. Because you are, I'm going to swear it again, fuckable in that sense. You are a mark. You are a target. You are exploitable. So you will be exploited, because out there are exploiters. Number 4, get to know yourself. You might go, I live with myself. Of course I know myself. Do you though? Are you actually living as yourself, or are you living as a safe avatar of who you've been taught to be? Remember I said, when it comes to narcissistic personality disorder, the narcissistic supply, the creation of a false self, I claimed that codependents are not the opposite. We're more like the mirror image of narcissists. The mirror image. Can't think of a better way of saying it. It's tricky saying the mirror image when you're talking about narcissism. Actually, no, it's a good thing. We're the echo. Narcissus and echo. So narcissists, they need narcissistic supply. They create a false image of themselves as amazing, lovable, frightening, whatever. On the other side, we have a kind of need for codependent supply. They want to be in a predatory state. We want to be in a prey state. We want to present a false image to the world that is non-threatening. I'm just nice. I'm just such a nice guy. That's my whole identity. It's just, I'm just so nice. And I'll just never say no to anybody. Do you want that? You might be okay with it for yourself, but let me ask you a question. If you have kids, or if you did have kids, would you want them walking through this world, not a unicorn utopia in your head, in this world with that attitude? I'm just dead nice, Mum. I'm just a nice girl, just a nice guy, Dad. Is that what do you think that's good? I think that's a recipe for catastrophe and a totally wasted life. Being nice. Being nice is not a value. Being agreeable, being hyper agreeable to the point where you have no boundaries and no capacity for conflict is not a value. It's a symptom of a sickness, which is a kind of entrained passivity, where you're in the ultimate prey cattle state. You do nothing to help yourself. You just go along to get along. You never go after anything that you want. If it comes to you, yay. If it doesn't, oh well. And you're half alive. I'm talking about myself here. I'm the same. I know, you can't kid me, because I know what it's like to live like that. I know all the justifications, religious, spiritual, psychological. Just a good Buddhist. I just have no ego. Oh, yeah, that's right. No ego. So get to know yourself. Respect yourself. Who are you? What do you like? What are your preferences? What are you into? Really, tell the truth. Tell yourself the truth. If you can't tell other people the truth, for God's sake, tell yourself. Sigmund Freud said that. It was one of the few pieces of like practical psychology that anybody can pick up. It was something like, paraphrasing, adopt the discipline of rigorous self-honesty in everything that you do. Thanks, Siggers. We enjoy that. Old Freudy. Do as a lion a beak, mate. Be as rigorously honest with yourself as you can. So tell the truth about who you are, what you really like to yourself, and validate it, because you might need to. Because if you've lived as a child and then in adulthood in an environment that says what you like doesn't matter and or it's not okay, what you want doesn't matter and or it's not okay, it's not okay for you to like at all, it's not okay for you to want at all, that conditioning is in a certain direction. We're back to brainwashing here, because that's not who you are, is it? They're learned patterns of behavior. Those are neural pathways that somebody's laid down. And if they've been laid down, we can do something about that and lay down new neural pathways that take you in a different direction. If you've been conditioned into it, you can be conditioned out of it. So you need to, maybe, if this strikes a chord with you, you might need to be able to say to yourself, it's okay for me to want what I want. It's okay for me to like what I like. It's okay for me to like, if you want to go one step further back than that, it's okay for me to want. And these are the things I like. These are the things that I want. And next, that's your white belt, yellow belt, green belt, blue belt level. And then when you get to brown belt, you're like, now I'm going to come up with some ways of going after the things I like and going after the things that I want. And then you know what you're doing at that point? You're working towards your black belt. And when you get your black belt, you're a person again, instead of a ghost, a spirit of a jellyfish vaguely inhabiting a body with socks and a bank account number. That's not life. That's not living. Living as ghosts is not life. It's not living. It's the ultimate form, I think, of psychological and spiritual slavery. Speaking of the spirit, number 5, I'm going to quote gospel to you, because as you all know, I'm a fine, upstanding Christian man, God-fearing. There's a Gnostic gospel, and it's the Gospel of Thomas, and it's my favorite quote from Jesus. I mentioned it on the Richard Grannon Philosophy channel, and somebody wrote, I can't find this in my Bible. It's like, you won't find it in your Bible. It's not there, but it's out there. It's apocryphal, so it's not universally accepted, and it is considered a Gnostic gospel because it embodies a Gnostic worldview. Anyway, in the Gospel of Thomas, a Jesus who is somewhat stylistically different to the Jesus that we're used to in other Gospels says, if that which is within you is brought forth from you, that which is within you will save you. If that which is within you is left inside of you, that which is within you will destroy you. You can look that up. That which is within you. Gospel of Thomas. You chew on that for a couple of years and you'll get different things from it every time. To me, though, one of the major ways of interpreting it that I found useful is the assumption that there is latent value in the person. It could be wrong. This is not science. This is not psychology, because we can't prove it. I just said science and psychology in the same sentence, like they're the same thing. That's funny, isn't it? Hey, how scientific is psychology? Listen, you've endured enough of my rants on that one. But okay, I'm just cutting off where people could go in the counter argument to this. This really is in the realm of philosophy, and maybe you could argue it's the realm of spirituality. If we want to be rigorous, cynical, skeptical rationalists, let's just take this as a game, a philosophy game, a thought experiment. What happens if we assume for a minute, half an hour, or a day that we and every human around us has latent value, but that if they're traumatized, full of unprocessed emotion, brainwashed, with no confidence in themselves whatsoever, that latent value will never be brought forth? And here's the bit that I like. Here's the Nietzschean part, because it's not all love and light and unicorns in the Gospel of Thomas. You have latent value. Sorry, bang the mic there. That's lovely. I've got latent value. I'm dead special. I'm like a unique snowflake. Yeah, you have latent value. And if it's brought out of you, it will lead to your salvation in the Christian sense, in the full-scale Christian sense. We're still in our thought experiment. That's great. I could be saved. Wonderful. Wait. But if it's not, it becomes a poison. It becomes explosives. It becomes a substance that's deadly to you. And the line isn't, it'll irritate you or it'll hurt a bit. It will destroy you. And I believe both elements of this saying are true. Both elements. I think it shoots to the heart of the human dilemma. Do the right thing, and you're living over here where there is salvation. Don't do anything. It's not even do the bad thing. It's not our dilemma as humans isn't really between good and evil, because evil's a bit of a pain in the bum. You've got to actually get out there and work and do stuff, and most people don't. Most people don't go out and commit gross acts of evil. They don't. The question is between actually doing the good and the hard and the disciplined and the righteous thing, based on value, based on intent, and doing, I'm going to swear again, fuck all, doing nothing. And that is a damnable path. You don't have to go out and commit acts of evil that will get you a little insert in Wikipedia. You just do nothing. You just go along. Only dead fish go with the flow. That's number 5. How am I doing for time? Going on a bit, standard. 6, Jung, shadow work. I never used to like Jung, but when I analyze this, I realize what it is I don't like the people who like Jung. They tend to be a bit floppy, hipster dipster. You know, everything is trite aphorisms that, you know, they deliver and they're like all smug about it. Like, oh, wasn't that extremely clever? Which irritates me. No sense of humor and no sense of, you know, irony about themselves. Take themselves too seriously. Wasn't into it. So I just discarded him for years, and I was like, I'm not getting involved in that. I'll stick with Freud, because the people who are into Freud, they tend to be a bit more rigorous and they don't mind being disliked, because Freud's not cool anymore. He's not fashionable. He's not being fashionable since the 60s. He really went out of fashion. So you need a bit of courage, and you need the courage to be disliked, citing the name of the book about Adler. So I preferred the Freudian way. But then I went back to Jung, this whole shadow work and individuation thing. And I was like, oh, I've missed a trick here. I thought Jung was Freudian slipped that. I thought Freud was the rigorous intellectual, courageous, and Jung, a bit more solipsistic, subjective, dreaming of being like a magician, you know, in his fantasy land. And in some of his works, he was, and at some periods of his life, he was very self-indulgent. But at other times, very, very intelligent, very insightful, very switched on, very, very switched on. In my opinion, equal, Freud's intellectual equal. Just the reputation is marred by those periods where he went a bit mad. And he just went off doing his own thing, very, very self-indulgently. But, you know, people know his name. It's useful. This, effectively, what I'm talking about tonight is shadow work. If we accept Jung's definition of shadow work, which is not cute, which is not easy to take on. Let's open this topic up by saying, if it doesn't irritate you, if it doesn't make you uncomfortable, if it doesn't make you angry, it probably isn't shadow work. Shadow work is tough. Shadow work is, in essence, the parts of yourself that you're not aware of, that if you were aware of, you wouldn't like. And it's not a binary where some things are in yin and some things are in yang, where some things are in darkness and some things are in light. Some things we know, like there's something there. I don't go there because it doesn't align with my ego ideal of who I think I am. It doesn't align with my Adlerian fictional narrative of the hero in my story, or the ultimate hero or the ultimate martyr, which is a kind of hero in the story I'm living. So I just don't go there. So some things are half in darkness, half in light. It's not so clear. But with Jungian shadow work, that which is in shadow is the part of ourselves that we have disavowed. We see it and we say, no, not that, not that, anything but that. I'm not that. I am not that. When you disavow and you shove things into the shadow, Freud's model of the unconscious was a little bit different to Jung's. In Jung's model of the unconscious, the things that got disavowed and cast into the unconscious would possess you. Well, these are very spiritual terms, but actually I've never come up with, or not yet, a better model for describing what it is that he's talking about. And you can definitely see the effects he's describing in the world, which indicates that as a model, not as a scientific fact, but as a model, it's a good one because you could see it. People suppress dark parts, ugly parts of themselves that they don't like, or parts of themselves that they don't think match their ego ideal of who they are or of who they would like to be. And those parts over time don't disappear. They grow, they come back, and they possess the person in weird ways. You can actually feel, I would claim, people who are in stages of shadow possession or unconscious possession or bits of themselves that they don't like, depression. There's probably a German word for that. There's a German word for everything. Bits of themselves that they don't like, possession. And I think in German you can create words like that. So please do, somebody who speaks German. Tension. When we talk about people with certain personality disorders making us feel like we're walking on eggshells around them, that is shadow possession. That's a person with a lot of unprocessed stuff. They see that which is ugly in themselves and they shove it away. It takes great bravery to do shadow work. And it's the work of adults, not of children, not of adolescents. It's the work of adults. And you need a thorough grounding in emotional literacy first, because the emotions it will bring up will be strong. It's a strong brew to make yourself drink. Shadow work, very strong and powerful. The changes that you get through shadow work change you in the way you operate in the world in ways that are not reversible. This isn't pop psychology. It's not self-development. It's not hypnosis. It's not NLP. It's the only thing that we have in the modern world that looks, talks, and acts like an actual initiation. Because we've lost all that. We've lost initiations. Young shadow work, that's the only thing we have now. But when you are initiated, the reason why they cut, circumcise, tattoo, mutilate, brand, put the crazy earrings in and or give you massive amounts of psychedelics, or who are the people that make you hold ants in gloves? There's fire ants and some terrible test is to traumatize the body and the mind so that there was you before and you after. And most initiation cultures rename the individual. You have your child's name and then you have your adult name. You sort of die through the initiatory process to be born again as a new person. And I think that's how it works. These things are irreversible. So that's why most people just get scared and they dance around it and they pretend that they're doing shadow work when I don't even know what they're doing. A lot of people who claim they've done shadow work, maybe they chanted in the mirror with a candle on and the lights off. And they looked in the mirror and they went, yeah, look dead scary. That's my shadow. I just did 15 minutes of shadow work. You fucking didn't. You didn't. Unless you were pressured outside of your comfort zone, angry, afraid, disgusted, and irritated. It's irritating work because it's like massage, hard massage. It finds where you're tight or where you're bruised, and then it pushes in and you're like, oh, not that. Can we do anything other than that thing. And shadow work is like, no, because we're doing that. That's what we're doing today. And you're like, oh, you just have to deal with it. And we're not nice. Humans aren't nice. We have shadows in us. We have rage. We have jealousy. We have violence. We have pettiness. We have cruelty. We have it all. But what's served by disavowing that? Nothing. You know what else you have inside of you with your shadow work? Assertiveness, lust, sense of humor, the capacity to get things done, the capacity to instill respect in others, charisma. People who are in touch with the shadow or have processed the shadow to a degree, they have a very different energy. They're compelling, they're alive, they're fascinating. What they're bringing you, their energy is always fresh. You know, you get around some people and the energy is dead. They're just spewing out the same crap. They say the same things, they think the same thoughts. They have this weird grey, dead energy around them. People who do shadow work or in touch with the shadow, it's fresh, it's always fresh, because you have a degree of integration. So to round this topic off, I've gone on a bit too long again. From shadow work, we're literally making parts of the unconscious that we don't like conscious. Jung was very into integration. So you take these parts, these disparate parts that we've cut off and pushed away, and you try to integrate them. And through doing the shadow work and integrating, reintegrating the dark parts of yourself, you reintegrate jealousy, you reintegrate aggression, you reintegrate whatever, and then you find that the blood is flowing through you more, because these are parts of your body. It would be like tying, you know, where you tie a strong thing, a tourniquet on different parts of your body until it goes cold and numb. And you're like, oh, my foot doesn't work very well now. Oh, well, I'll keep going because I never liked that foot anyway. But the foot's still there. It's just cold and numb with no blood. So when you take that off, there's blood flowing and the energy flows more. It's good. I recommend it, but it is hard. As you do that and you integrate these parts, you begin the process of what Jung called individuation. Probably for us, because these concepts weren't integrated and instilled in us in childhood, it would be like full individuation in our lifetimes probably isn't realistic, but we can work towards it. And then we can work towards putting it in the education system for the children where it belongs so that they can. Just an idea, not the most popular one. It's that psychedelic part of it that I was saying to them that the education system really didn't like. The seventh part of this is you need a strong sense of self. As I said before, a lot of us don't live as people. We don't live as full-blooded, embodied, red-blooded human animals in the present. We sort of inhabit the space as ghosts, just like narcissists do. So do codependents. Why? Because both are raised in terrible trauma, and it's safer to show up as a ghost. It's safer to show up playing Let's Pretend. It's safer to show up as a character, as a mask, as a costume, because somebody's probably going to smash it down. If you're a narcissist and you smash it down, they'll just go, well, it doesn't matter because I'm God anyway. And if you're on the codependent end of the spectrum and it gets smashed down, you say, well, it doesn't matter because that wasn't me anyway. I'm hidden away. Where are you hidden? I claim, my metaphor is that we withdraw into an internal cave. We leave the avatar of who we are, who we're pretending to be, who we say we are, outside the cave, in the hopes that when predators come, they tear that thing to shreds. What does it take to keep the decoy avatar, scarecrow person alive? Submission, supplication, a servile attitude, and the willing to be enslaved by people or circumstances. So as long as you keep that avatar alive with codependent supply through supplication, submission, and self-enslavement and self-denial, self-abnegation, you get to deny yourself the terrible responsibility of growing up. So we get to abrogate the responsibility of our own growth, of dealing with our own wounds, of healing our own pain, of being a fully fledged human being, of being an adult who would be capable then of being a parent one day. And we get to live in a kind of perpetual childhood / adolescence. That's the payoff. And we feel safer that way. We feel safe because we can stay hidden. We can stay in the cave. The problem is, as the years go by, and depending on how strong the trauma is, I claim in this metaphor, which is in the realm of psychoanalysis, you'll notice, it's not science, it's just a metaphor. We go further and further back into the cave, and if we still don't feel safe, we shrink ourselves, and if we still don't feel safe, we turn ourselves invisible. This is where I got to. And if we still don't feel safe, we find a little crack in the wall at the back of the cave, and we shrink ourselves down to the size of an ant, and we crawl in there. What's in the cave? Well, there used to be a self that was hiding in a cave. Now, if you go in the cave, you won't see the self. It's in a crack in the wall, and it's tiny, and it's invisible. It's an invisible ant that lives in a crack. That's where I got to. That's how I know how this works, because that is me at my lowest ebb. That's who I was. And there was no person. There was no human. There was no human adult, human animal embodied in the present moment present. Because I couldn't be present. I was terrified. I was too scared to be. Too scared to want, too scared to like, because all of that takes vulnerability, and all of that exposes you to the potential of a no, of a rejection, of things not going your way. So to avoid things not going my way and of me getting hurt because I was so fragile, I just lived a lie. I lived the lie of an invisible ant stuck in a crack. It's the title of my next album, The Invisible Ant Stuck in a Crack. So what I'm claiming is we need a self. So we have to get that ant to come back out into the cave to become visible. What does being visible mean? You must know what your values are, and you must know what you want. Then you need to grow a bit, and then you need to become more visible, and you need to grow a skin, a nice thick skin, so that when people disagree with you or they confront with you or whatever happens, you're robust, you're resilient. And then what happens is you get used to asking for what you want a little bit, little by little by little. Could take years. I'm being honest with you. I don't have a quick fix course for this. Sorry about that. Could take years, probably will take years. Years and years of your life. But even if you're just on the process towards this, it's better than living as an invisible ant in the crack. So you grow a bit, you get a thicker skin, and then a magical thing happens. You start to trust yourself. When you trust yourself and you think I can assess threats in the environment because I'm not living as a dippy, childish, adolescent, goofy avatar. I'm living or trying to live as an adult. So I'm going to make threat assessments as an adult. I'm going to say, I don't think that person is safe. I don't think that place is safe. I don't think these people, this environment, this situation is good for me or in alignment with my values. Nor is it in alignment with the direction I want my life to go in, nor is it in alignment with my intentions or the system of morals that I've developed, because I have moral boundaries and I don't do things that are bad for me and bad for other people. I try to stick to doing good things. These are the thoughts you'll start to think. These are the feels you'll start to feel. The end goal then is to get out the cave. Life is not life lived in a cave. Life is not life if you are stuck at home and isolated. That's survival. You're surviving. Keep putting food in your mouth. Keep putting your socks on. But you're not living. You have to get back outside. You have to reclaim the space and say, I'm a human being. I exist. I have wants. I have needs. And I would like to go outside, please. And you need to state that loudly and clearly in alignment with your values, even if there are negative consequences. That's why you've grown a nice thick skin and you have resilience. And then you can start to live where there is risk. There's no life without risk. No love without there's no life without risk, and no love without vulnerability. And there's no rights without responsibilities. If we don't claim our responsibilities, we can't ask for rights. It doesn't work like that. And trying to do that is just entitlement. So we have to be courageous. We have to move forward. And that's how you find your purpose. And that's how you get your life in order. What did I do? 45 minutes around there. I'll now take questions with the help of Thomas. And he's just given me a thumbs up. And please make them one sentence long. Have them end in a question mark, because the quality of questions that you ask determines the quality of the answers that you're going to get. And it's a good discipline for you to learn how to formulate good questions. You'll find if you formulate a good question, you don't need me or anybody to answer them for you. So if you see any good questions, Thomas, if you just bang them up on the screen. Could you mute my mic for a second whilst I gulp this? The cameraman is Thomas. Yeah, that's right. That one that says how to integrate the shadow, we could go with that one. Well, yeah, let's do that. It's on screen now. Am I unmuted? Yeah. People ask me about internal family systems all the time, and it sounds like it's boss, but I haven't looked at it yet. Sorry. That one from Kelsey Carrick, please, Thomas. Would you say setting core values is another way to regulate emotions? It's a big question, this, and I'm going to give you my honest answer, knowing that some people really, really hate this answer. If you have core values and you have boundaries and you're living courageously and with resilience, you will become more emotionally regulated. This is a Jordan Peterson point. If you are low down on the dominance hierarchy, there's no such thing as dominance hierarchies. I'm afraid there are. And I'm afraid that what we are as human beings is climbers of them, like it or not, whether it fits in with your ego ideal or not. When you're low on the dominance hierarchy, you become emotionally dysregulated. You become very sensitive and your emotions spike up and down because at a certain level, you'll feel like your survival is being threatened. So the more courageously you're living and the more purpose you live with, the less stuff bothers you, the more emotionally regulated you become, the calmer you become, the less anxiety you'll feel and the less depression you feel. There's a lot of reasons for it, but that's a quick answer for you. Thanks for that, Kelsey. Excuse me.
What are your 5 core values and why?
They go past really fast, don't they?
Yeah.
The thing is with core values, mine, like everybody else's, they change over time. If I could, and they're mine, it's like, you know, it's like when people say to me, if you want more followers on YouTube, let them into your kitchen and let them see you cook something. I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to be one of them. I'm not doing that. What I would advocate for you would be to look for, especially with this topic, having a core value, having a high value for courage and having a high value for reason, like being rational, being objective and being courageous. It moves us in a direction that empowers us rather than disempowers us. I'm very serious about this brainwashing thing, the propaganda, the psyops, the cultural conditioning. It's a really, really big push, has been for a long time, to get people into moral relativism, into subjectivity, into solipsism, into self-indulgence, and to passivity, because it makes them weak and it makes them easy to control. So courage, rationality, discipline. These would be good boundaries to go with. Yeah, junk values, it's not my concept. I'm pretty sure it's the journalist Johan Hari's concept. If it isn't, I apologize. Johan Hari. And what he said basically is that in the place where we should have values, we have junk values or anti-values. So maybe we could have courage and reason as values, but instead we have self-indulgence and narcissism as values. And I would claim that in this particular peculiar aggressive version of late stage consumer capitalism that we're in right now, that's the case, because cultures have core values, and our core values as a culture would be self-indulgence and narcissism. So when people say, are we in a pandemic of narcissism? I'm like, we've been in a pandemic of narcissism. We're way past that. We actually have that as a value. I've been saying this for years. So if you get up on stage and you do narcissism now, and for years it's been true, at least since the early 2000s, you will be applauded for the sheer stupid expression of your narcissism because you won at the game of narcissism. And that means it's a universally, culturally accepted junk value, sadly. Cheers, Thomas. Ellen, did you progress through shadow work faster when alone or when assisted by another person? I am a man and I don't ask for help very easily. I have been to counselling. I would go to psychotherapy again if I felt like I needed it. I've had 4 or 5 counsellors over the years. With shadow work, this really has only been something that I've been aware of since like early 2020. It's not long for me. And well, with the lockdowns as well, like it was harder to see people. So I just did it on my own. But in a certain sense, if you look at the emotional literacy work that I've been banging on about since early 2017, which did come out of my own therapeutic experience in early 2017, that is shadow work, and it's an excellent grounding for shadow work. So I was used to processing painful and disturbing emotions at that point. So it helped me, but I'm still doing it. I'm just like, it's not something I've like attained above. I still loads to process, loads to do. Thanks for that, Ellen. How is neurosis related to internalizing an idea put around by people that life happens to you and you don't have a say? Well, I would argue that if you mean in the Jungian Freudian sense, that is it's a neurotic idea, and it's a neurosis creating idea because it's not true. So to the extent, so when they used neurosis and neurotic, Jung and Freud, I don't know if Adler used it all that much, but certainly for Jung and Freud, it would mean not sane. Not sane. It has a different meaning nowadays, but for them it was like, it was a bit more clear cut. It was like that which would be, you'd have to use several words to say it, I believe, in modern parlance. It would be that which is on the scale of mental health issues. So neurosis would be, therefore, that which wasn't an accurate reflection of the reality of the situation would be a neurotic perception of the situation. So life happens to you and you don't have a say. You can live like that. And sometimes it does feel like that. And it's not a hard illusion to embrace, but it is an illusion. And to the extent, if you go psychotherapy to Zen, which people have, there's a whole load of books and seminars and teachings relating psychotherapy to Zen. If you embrace a lifestyle and perception of illusion, Maya, and not reality, you're living in neurosis, because life does happen to you to a degree, and sometimes you don't have a say, but that's not the ultimate truth of life, is it? You have agency, you have sovereignty, you can do things, you are doing things, you also make life happen, and you have about as much of a say as you will claim you have. Cheers for that. How can love and humor be values? Well, if you put them on high and say, I value love and I want to live a life in accordance with love, you could try that. I never have love in and of it. I mean, love is it encompasses so much. It's like one of the words in the English language that could mean so many different things. If I had a client and they were doing that, I'd be like, you should define what kind of love you mean. Humor can be values, absolutely. You can say that I want to live my life prioritizing humor. Wouldn't be a preference for me. Maybe playfulness or fun, of which humor would be like an element of that. But I've seen people put love and humor as values. You then go and say humor is more like an instrument or a capacity one has. Agreed. But, so when you're in the white belt process and you come out and I go, punch, and you come out and you go, like that, and it's not great. I would just be like, yeah, keep doing that. Sometimes you can correct people and instruct them, and it just kills the drive to keep going. When I used to teach martial arts, I would always say yes and yes, great. It was a good kick, and try twisting on the ball of your foot, and try opening your hip, and try pulling your shoulder back or moving it. You know, so with this, if I saw love and humor, if I was a teacher in a classroom, Spartan life coach classroom, and somebody writes love and humor, I could go over and go, those aren't really values, but I wouldn't. I just go, good, you wrote down something. You might think that's patronizing, but think of how many people who don't write down anything. Do you know what I mean? So I wouldn't say. I just let them crack on. Good question though, and I agree with your core point. Collage Mateld. How to handle the system's eroding, persistent, and tiring pushback. Well, I'm not really. I understand you. I'm not in a reality where there's a system that is pushing me back and it's tiring me. I think the sort of like my cosmology, my view of how the world is working is in the sort of the Terence McKenna way. We're eminentizing the eschaton. We're hitting a point. We seem to be hitting the point that he said we'd hit in 2012. We're doing it in 2021. Eminentizing the eschaton, or things are coming to a head. There are certain factors that are leading us to a crescendo. When you listen to classical music and there's an orchestra that's going up and up and up and up and up towards a crescendo, it doesn't continue going up and up and up and continue crescending. There's a crescendo. It doesn't crescend for like forevermore. And it's uncomfortable right now because the dial is up and up and up and up. And it's like, God, everything is so intense and so... But then there will be the afterwards. Then there will be the after. And I think we're seeing that. It's in sight. It's in sight. So the system that we are in now is going to fail. It has to. I think. I mean, I could go off on this for a whole other 2-hour thing, but like, it's wrong of us. Was that you laughing, Thomas? Thomas is laughing at me. He's like, please don't go on. He knows I'll go on about this afterwards when we stop filming. It's actually, I thought about this the other day. I'll keep it brief. I won't tell you what I was doing when I was thinking about this, but it's actually silly of us to think that this system can continue. It's very old. It's very old. And the number of people in the world has exploded whilst that system has been operating on the same basic principles for at least 120 years. And to me, it's like airplanes and machine guns. You know, the airplanes that we fly in, they haven't really changed. The commercial airliners haven't really changed in the nuts and bolts. And even with the way they communicate on the ground at all, machine guns, we're not firing laser guns in 2021. The core bits and pieces of a machine gun, depending on whose analysis you would take of it, are really like, there's no major technological advancement since 1890. So, and you think, well, why are you comparing it to machine guns and planes? Because these things make the world go round. Machine guns, airplanes, and political systems, nothing's changed. Everything's changed outside of those machines, but they haven't changed. And there's just, they can't. They simply cannot keep up with the rate of change. They're not designed for this world. And we don't live in a world that's advanced 120 years in 120 years. We live in a world that's advanced by the previous rate of progression 1,000 years in 120 years. And so the system is not under stress. It's breaking. These bolts are not bending, they're pinging off, and the system's falling apart. And we're already in it now. I used to say, do you remember years ago, those of you who followed me for a while, this bus will go off the cliff if we don't do something about it. The bus is off the cliff. It's off the cliff now. So to me, this is, we've got front row seats to watching a major transition in human history. Major transition. And so that's that. It's all falling apart, kids. But don't worry, it's going to be okay. Brendan says, is there a relationship we can look for between values and anti-values? Yeah. What I would have in my head, you know, some people do this on like dating sites and when they're looking at relationships, and it's actually, I think it's worth doing for every area of your life. These are the things I have to have. I can't do without these things. If it's a long list, you're screwed, really. So you want a short list of things that you just have to have in your life. These would be akin to your values. And these are the, what do they call, deal breakers. These are the things I can't deal with. And so the relationship becomes a moral philosophy, kind of. It becomes a sort of moral code. Again, these are Nietzschean ideas of organizing value and or organizing morality. Talk morality now and people tune out. So let's talk value. So you have your things that you can't do without. Have to have these. Have to have honesty, good communication, trust, and positive regard. I cannot have, I'm talking relationships, but apply it to any area of your life. I cannot have contempt, cannot have entitlement, cannot have deceit, you know. So that would become like a value and counter value. Good, bad, moral system, really. Value, counter value. So yeah, you can organize them like that, and you should. So that when people, opportunities and scenarios come up in your life, you can, from the unconscious and with full samurai resolve, just say, I'm not having that. And I don't care what the negative consequence is. I'll lose this cushy job. I'll lose this particular lifestyle choice or this thing that I'm attached to. I'm not under any circumstances having any of those three things, whatever they are. So that would be the relationship between value and anti-value. Cheers, Thomas. Is online dating killing romance? No, romance was always dead, my friend. Romance is the root word for romance means fiction, which is why in French, when you read a novel, it's a roman. Pardon my French, not very good. What's the Czech word for novel? A book that's fictional. It's not roman.
It's the same word, novella.
Novella, same word. I'm not sure what it is in Spanish and Italian, but the roman comes from the idea of mythical tales of chivalry, fiction. Nobody believed that was the way it was supposed to be. It was fiction. So when we say, oh, that's so romantic, we're actually saying, oh, that's so fictional. So in my humble opinion, if two people want to come together and have anything looking like a safe attachment within a sexual context, fucking good luck with that. Let me expand on that a little bit. I personally believe it's meant to be turbulent. So when that happens, that sort of sexual attachment with love and passion, it's turbulent because it's meant to be. It's a kind of madness, and it's meant to be. Slavoj Žižek talks about the fact that when we fall in love, you tombe en amour, you fall into it. You also fall into insanity. And he makes the point, other people have made the point, that by all the coordinates of falling in love, it's a kind of insanity. So I've been guilty of this, blaming like social media, the online world and all that for all of society's ills. But I just hadn't read enough history, and I'd not read enough historical novels, romans. And now that I have, I'm like, no, this was the same, you know, pre-Bolshevik revolution, Russia, they had the same issues that we have today. Or if you read, I just finished, I'm reading War and Peace. Bertrand Russell says the philosopher Bertrand Russell says there's two reasons to read a book. One is for the book itself, and the other one is to brag about it. And I just finished A Picture of Dorian Gray. And if you read A Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde, and it talks about romance and it's kind of narcissism. It's the story of narcissism made manifest, made flesh. It's very modern. The same problems are there, So some of these things have always existed. Online dating doesn't help, but it's not online dating's fault that we're in the mess that we're in. For one, we've always been in a mess. Men and women coming together in a sexual attachment is tough. It's challenging. It's meant to be. Biology requires friction. It requires turbulence. Sex requires friction for it to be successful. And then after that sort of sexual phase, you end up in a lot of power plays and people trying to secure their position and acting in ways that are dishonest. But if you have two people who come together who haven't processed their own shadow, and then they do something that brings the shadow out, nothing brings your shadow forward like intimacy. Nothing's gonna trigger your emotional flashbacks like vulnerability. And so it becomes a bit of a mess. Long-term safe attachment, my humble opinion, again, only possible between two adults who've actually resolved childhood trauma and enough. They don't have to be perfect little Buddhas, but they need to have resolved it enough to create an environment where that's actually possible. Latka says, Richard, that is me. Have you studied the neuroscience? I'm not reading papers over here. I haven't read a paper in years behind healing and trauma. I have a little bit. And how it applies to behavioral techniques to healing. There's one that I did study the neuroscience of, and it was the shrinkage of the volume of the hippocampus in relation to trauma. So there's a part of your brain that the neuroscientists, and actually new research has come out just recently, so it's not true that I never read the research. I do some, you know what I do? I'll have a scan of a paper that reads the research for me. That's how I cheat. So I know that this has been confirmed in very recent research. The idea was that the hippocampus is responsible for emotion and memory, and possibly for the allocation of the appropriate emotion to a memory, which is how memory functions. You have to have the right emotion for the memory. And they found that when people had undergone heavy trauma and they tested the brain, the volume of the hippocampus had shrunk, it diminished. So there's parts of the brain post-trauma that, I'm going to need some water in a second, but not yet, that actually shrink due to the stress of trauma over time. And what they found is that you can retrain that part of the brain, like almost like a muscle, so that the hippocampus comes back, but it must be developed. And they did things. You can read the research yourself. If you go to Google Scholar and you put in hippocampus, volume, PTSD, you'll see this research. They had people do things like, they tried right after an accident when you're in A&E, if you get people to play Tetris, which is kind of a memory game, does it help with the trauma? All kinds of work like this was done. Long story short, they found that when the hippocampus shrinks, people's memory struggles. So traumatized people, they struggle to remember stuff. They're more emotionally dysregulated because what's an emotional flashback? You're trying to have a memory of a feeling that's associated with an actual event, but the part of your brain responsible has shrunk. You're physically less capable. You're physically less capable of assigning the appropriate emotion to the appropriate frame for a memory for any circumstance that you face, because the way we live in the world is a scenario plays out, the unconscious, the brain, quickly does a transderivational search for all the previous experiences that look like that one, and it can only access that if it's color-coded with emotion. I'm bluffing, but something like that. The emotion lets the brain know where the memories are. So to access it, it needs emotion. As it pulls out the memories in order to say, this is now the appropriate response, because this is happening in real time. It's fractions of a second to the scenario unfolding. And this is the correct emotional reaction. This is how you should feel emotionally. This is very threatening. This is very loving. This is very funny. This requires a business-like calm, whatever it is. Your brain's supposed to do that, but it can't. It can't actually, or its capacity to do it is diminished. And so you struggle to respond with the appropriate emotions as situations unfold. Does that sound familiar to any people with PTSD or CPTSD? Sure, it does. But they found that doing certain memory techniques and memory training, things like Tetris over time, helped. You know what's better than that? my humble opinion, it's not being clinically tested because it's not an accepted therapeutic tool, is emotional literacy. Bear with me. You sit there with colored pens in a childlike state, because when do you draw with colored pens now? You probably stopped doing that in primary school, unless you're an artist, in a childlike, trance-like state, saying to yourself, when you do the emotional literacy exercise, how did that make me feel? How did this make me feel? And then you draw it down, and you're in a calm state as you draw these things down. And there is a chance that that might be helping you to redevelop the capacity of the hippocampus in a safe physiotherapeutic way, if you like, over time. And I think that when people do the emotional literacy for a long period of time, that could be one of the contributing factors to why the majority of people feel more emotionally regulated. It certainly worked for me. So there's a behavioral technique. It's the emotional literacy exercise. Might bring the hippocampus volume back, maybe. Not claiming it does, but it might. They said Tetris did. I don't see why that wouldn't. Mind mapping. Go ahead, Thomas. Callie Pigeon. Richard. What, aside from emotional literacy efficiency I'm already doing, can I model for my son to help him grow into a whole, healthy adult eventually? Well, that's very kind of you. Thomas is doing me water. Yeah, everything that you do, he's modeling. You're his role model for being an adult in the world. And that's what happens. You know, I said before, we as human beings, we repeat and we repeat and we repeat. We also model and we model and we model. And children do, thank you, Thomas, they do what we do. They don't really do what we say. They will do what we say, but they'll do it bitterly. The power that we as adults have with children is they're compelled to do what we do. They can't stop themselves. It's such a primal drive in them to model us, and they feel no resistance because it all happens unconsciously. So if mummy takes her shoes off before she goes into the house, I won't be like going, oh, I've got to take my shoes off. Oh, I can't be arsed, and I'll do it. It will be unconscious because I want to be an adult as well. There's a thing in there, in mimetic theory. What's it called? It relates to mimetic theory. It's mimetic something. Is it mimetic desire? I think it could be mimetic desire. So I noticed with my sister's kids, little nephews, one's 3 and one's 1. If you imbue an object with adult power, they want that object. It doesn't matter what else is in the room, what toys they've got, the cartoon that's on. So I've got a vape. It's a colourful vape, but a couple of times they caught me using it, and maybe I'd go outside and I was like quickly and they'd see through the window. Nothing else in the world mattered at that moment other than the object that I'd snuck outside to use. And they're very context. They read context. It's like, so they can't understand high level adult concepts like, mortgage repayments on your house, but they know what sneaking outside to do something is. And maybe we're offering more data than we think. Maybe my emotional state changes and I'm like, I'm going to go outside and vape now whilst they're watching TV or whatever. But because I think it is called mimetic desire, because I've imbued this object, this thing or this behavior, and mimetic desire is an idea, with meaning and significance, they think that's significant. That's how they copy what you do. So if you're meditating, they'll want to meditate. If you're singing and dancing, they'll sing and dance. I tried this with my nephews. I'd sing them a song, and I'd do a dance, and they'd laugh, and they'd start doing this. They'd try and sing the same song and do the same dance because it looks like fun and I'm doing it. So what if you want your child to be boundaried, you go first. If you want them to be emotionally regulated, you go first. If you want them to say, I don't want to do that. Why do we do that? I don't want to follow the rules blindly. Then you don't follow rules blindly, and you don't demand that they do either. It's tough parenting. There's a video coming out this week that I did with a mate of mine from years ago, from when I was a self-defense instructor, a guy called TJ Kennedy, and he's a parent. And we got into parenting. And I was saying the thing with parenting as an observer is, to be a good parent, you always just have to take the hardest path. Everything is just hard. So if you want them to be good kids, you have to be a better human. Ugh. I just want a psychology technique to make them be good kids. No, you actually have to be a better human. If I've had this problem because my knee has been bad for a couple of years with the surgery and everything else. Right now it's getting better, but it's still a bit weak. I don't want them to watch TV. I don't want them looking at mobile phones. Okay, Uncle Richard, are you going to go outside and play with them? And I'll be like, oh God, what's the other choice? There isn't one. They're either going to do that or they're going to play outside. And if you play, like, you have to go with them. So every choice with parenting to do it right as an observer seems to be the higher path, the harder path. And that's the way it goes, my mate. That's my observation. Thanks for that, Callie. Joe says, is there a key difference between all the dysfunctional people that have still managed to find partners and those of us who can't? Yes, there is. It's called compromise and giving up on your dreams. Could you mute me for a second, Thomas, please? Let me try and say something nice and hopeful. The dysfunctional people who've managed to find partners. I mean, look, I don't know about you, but when I'm observing people in relationships, especially if they're dysfunctional, you know, you gotta, like, what do you want? What do you want? Do you want what your parents had? Do you want what your grandparents had? Is there a model that you've created? Do you see people around you are having the relationship that you want to have? So following the principles of what I've already taught you on this tutorial tonight and what I've taught you in other tutorials, don't leave it in the unconscious. Make it really super conscious. What do I want? Write it down. This is the relationship I want. This is what I want it to look like. If you know people who did it well, write that down on the mind map as well. If you know elements of their relationship and their relationship and their relationship that you like, even though their relationships aren't perfect, you write them down. And then, ask yourself the question, you know, like, what do I have to have? What will I not put up with? Write that down. Who do I need to be? What do I need to be doing consistently, unconsciously, to manifest a relationship that looks like that? Write that down. What kind of a person do I need to be with to manifest a relationship that looks like that? Am I qualified for this? Because some people, they have ideas of relationships and I'm talking to them, I'm like, you're not qualified for that. You're too silly. You're too childish. You're too obsessed with, you're too self-obsessed. Relationships is sacrifice. Both of you must be leaning into sacrifice. And people say, no, that's nonsense. It's masochistic. And I would say to you, good luck. Good luck. If you both are not consciously aware that your long-term relationship, otherwise, I mean, like, what else? What do you want? Do you want to bunk up with somebody for 3 months? That's a doddle. They have an app for that. It's called Tinder. Bunk up for 3 months, fall out with each other, go your separate ways. Easy peasy. So if you want something long-term, you need to both consciously be in the mindset of, I am willing to sacrifice to make this relationship work, and it will be work. No, you're not romantic enough, Richard. I live in the real world. I've been doing relationship therapy against my will for 7 years, because if you're talking to people and it's in the realm of narcissistic abuse, there's a ton of people who think they've been narcissistically abused, and all that's happened is they've been through really bad breakups, or they think that they have CPTSD and they're heartbroken. It's hard and it's dangerous. Love, sex, relationships, not a game. Hard and dangerous. It's dangerous if you value your time. It's dangerous if you value your money. But people insist. They insist on trying to do their whole attitude and their demeanor as they approach the thing is silly Billy Philly Millington's. Disney Pompity poopity peeps. Hee hee ha ha hoo hoo. Yeah, okay. Hee hee ha ha. Goodbye, decade of my life. Hello, being with somebody who I don't want to be with, but I've got kids with, so I have to talk to them for the next 22 years at least, probably forever. Yeah. Ha ha hee hee hoo hoo. Good fucking luck with that. You've got to take it seriously. Got to take it seriously. You've got to make the unconscious conscious. Don't be shy of what you want, because a lot of us do that. We play the game that fragile narcissists play. We have these ideas, these elevated, pedestalized, idealized ideas, what we want love is, but we're ashamed of them. So we don't look at them. We sort of look next to them, and we go, I hope I get that. And if I say to you, what is it that you want? You go, I don't know. No, say it. You want that, do you? Tell you, if you can't tell me or you can't tell your friend, at least tell yourself and look at it and go, right, this is what I want. Is that realistic? Is that likely to happen? Why do I want that? Why does it need, get into it? It's hard, man. That's shadow work. If you actually unpack what you want from love, that is shadow work. If you unpack what you want a relationship to look like, it's shadow work. I'm on this silly Billy Philly Millingtons thing because, people, girls, women like Pride and Prejudice. And I don't like Pride and Prejudice, any of the versions or the TV shows of it. And there's another show that came out recently called Bridgerton, which is the same thing. And the main focus is, who am I going to marry? And it's this hysterical, oh, Millie, I have to tell you, Lord Carrington has offered me his hand in marriage. I hate it. I hate it because it's dangerous propaganda, really dangerous. And then I went to read Leo Tolstoy, War and Peace, and book 1 is like that. I was like, I thought this was going to be some hardcore, deep Russian philosophy. And it's actually nobility, not all of it, but a lot of hand-wringing amongst the nobility over who is going to marry who. And when we say romance and we talk about chivalry, these were the stories of nobility. So there's some confusion has occurred over the years between who we are and what it is that we're trying to achieve. If you like Jim Gaffigan, he does a very funny stand-up bit about marriage and weddings and how we all sort of act like we're the royal families from medieval times. Let us have a day where our families can join and feast, and we're not. So what are we? These are the things we need to look at. And what are we trying to do? How likely is it that two human beings who haven't processed their own unconscious drives, who are not really switched on, can just live in the same house for 30 years? Never mind. Have sex, deal with their emotions around sexuality, around romantic attachment, have children, all these. It's tough. It's a lot. If I stand outside of it, knowing what I know about human behavior and the way people are, I just look and I go, please do it if you can, respect to you, but it's a lot. And however much you think it is, you can probably times it by 10. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot to do. And why am I saying this? Do I want to crush your dreams around love? Absolutely not. That's not my purpose here. I want to save your dreams, because I think people set their expectations so high, and then it's been hyper-normalized through brainwashing, that when it's not that, they feel terrible. They think they've done something wrong. You haven't. If you made it last, I'd swear on my life, I mean this, I'm not being facetious. I know I'm a wind-up merchant. If you did 2 weeks with somebody, well done you. Don't feel bad. People are tough, and they're never tougher than when they're in that context, around intimacy and vulnerability. You did 6 months, well done. You did 6 years, well done. Don't feel bad that it didn't play out as this awful phrase. Maybe it's one of the most toxic phrases in the English language, happily ever after. You know what I said about goal setting before? Set directions, not goals, because you never really hit goals. And if you do, you'll feel depressed. There's no happily ever after. That's like outside of life. That's maybe if you both died or you both slipped into a coma, or we just shoved you and set you in amber, you'd have your happily ever after. But life, you grow, you change, life moves, the world changes in ways that are unpredictable. So don't feel bad if you're not in a relationship. Don't feel bad if you've been in a string of them and they broke down. Don't feel bad if you're in one and it's breaking down. That's normal. That's normal. Happily ever after. Show me. Show me. It does exist. I've seen people who are happy enough that I would be satisfied from a sort of a psychological, a cold, detached perspective. I'm like, if you're 70, 80% happy, great. That's fantastic. 70 to 80% of your needs are being met. That's great. That's fantastic. But for everybody else, it's rare as rocking horse shit. And it's a lot to do with what we're talking about tonight. You have two avatars. They're not even people. They're not even fully summoned humans, red-blooded, present with their intergenerational childhood trauma processed, the unconscious made conscious. Two avatars in a power struggle. It's like a puppet show. Maybe that's where Punch and Judy came from. You don't have Punch and Judy in the Czech. We have a weird thing in the UK where we have these little puppets that beat each other up. You can't do it anymore. It's not very politically correct. Maybe that's where it came from, because why is it funny? Why would it have been funny in times where we were a little bit rougher and more psychopathic? Because it would resonate with people, because that's the way marriage was, a Punch and Judy show. Two avatars of two human beings playing roles that are, well, in that case, ugly and violent. Stay hopeful, kids. Love is good, but like there's elements of what we think about relationships that I think do more harm than good. Oh God. How long have you got? Human life experiences. Could you please speak on food addiction? Yeah, I could speak on it for a long time. I actually read your comment about diets, and then I went off into the other room and I thought about it. I ended up thinking about it for an hour and not replying to you, because really it needs a video. Short form, a couple of the thoughts that I had. I've been addicted to different things in my life. Cocaine, sex, alcohol, fighting, all of that was in my 20s, and legitimate addictions. I was deep in the darkness for probably the best part of a decade, and I kicked all of them with smoking as well, addicted to cigarettes, with varying degrees of ease. But food has been a real problem for me, a really big problem for me. And I was thinking about it when I read your comments on the Richard Grannon Philosophy channel. I was like, why is it such a big problem? And these are thoughts I've had before, like when you go to your grandma's house, she doesn't offer you a dab of speed, a pill, and a line of beef. She will offer you coffee and a cake. She will offer you food or leftovers from yesterday. So food is love and food is social cohesion. Name a culture in the world, anywhere in the world, that doesn't come together for major social events and exchange food. Drugs are not, well, maybe in some cultures drugs would be love, but there's not many of them where you'd sit around and snort lines of coke together or take another drug together in that facile way. So there's that. Food you have to have. You don't have to have cocaine or cigarettes. You don't have to have tons of promiscuous sex or get into fights with people. In fact, it's better if you don't. Much better if you don't. Much healthier. But you'll die without food. So when dealing with food addiction, I started to realize I'm being faced with temptation 3 to 5 times a day, because I've got to eat 3 to 5 times a day to function. And yeah, it's a struggle. It's very, very hard. But it's much harder if you are boundaryless. And by that, I mean you have weak internal boundaries, weak external boundaries. If you're a people pleaser, if you're heavily codependent, and if you're very emotionally dysregulated. For reasons that we can get into elsewhere, but short form would be food is a socially acceptable and effective way of moderating anxiety and sometimes depression as well, depending on where you're at genetically and the types of food that you use, because we all respond somewhat differently to heavily salted food, heavily processed food, heavily sugared food, lots of carbs. Some people need a lot of fat, some people, whatever it is. There are emotions that are not emotions that can be experienced somatically. Gabor Mate has touched on this, so has Bessel van der Kolk, where some hunger in the realm of the hungry ghost is actually not really hunger. It's actually an emotion that's somatized, that's turned up as hunger in the body. And so for me now, like I just pretty much all the time stick to tracking my calories, and I have to have like a daily discipline when it comes to food, where I distinguish clearly between authentic hunger, it's time to refuel my body because I'm hungry, or something else, which might be, like I said, like the somatization of another emotion. But food addiction's it's a bugger. People who love you are always going to offer you food, and you have to do it 3 to 5 times a day. And you have to, what's also really important is to have cake. Isn't it, Thomas?
Another question?
Hit me with another question, Thomas. Thomas's girlfriend made some cake. Don't worry, it's healthy. It's not cream, it's cottage cheese. I think you need congruent values to have a lasting, healthy relationship. But the true basis is consciousness, where you are on the shadow resolution issue. Could you turn my mic off for a second, please? Say what? Cake and vodka. That's true. That's true Czech hospitality. Yeah, like core values need to be congruent. If you have junk values or absolute I can't stand that, and they're showing up with that, you're definitely going to have problems. But really, it's the shadow resolution, I think, that's going to do it. Very easy to project onto people elements of our parents or previous abusers. I mean, it's tough. I'm not being facetious when I say that. I'm not being a wind-up merchant or, you know, the voice of doom to get a reaction out of people. I really sincerely believe it's very, very tough for humans to do it. And I'm banging the drum not to crush your hope, but so that you don't shame yourself when it goes to shit, because it usually does. And why wouldn't it? Why would it not? Forgive yourselves and each other. I'm going to steer clear of anything that would be better handled by a doctor or a pediatrician. But do I think there's a relationship between CPTSD and childhood chronic illness? I think that the body, the brain, the mind, the emotions, the spirit are one unit. And there's a direct correlation. I think it's not unscientific. I know it's not unscientific to say there's a direct correlation between stress and trauma and illness. We know that. That's indisputable. What I don't want is for people to hear me saying, if a child has childhood chronic illness, come hoc ergo propter hoc, logical fallacy of reversal, that's caused by CPTSD, because some people develop illnesses and there's no CPTSD present. But it's a good question. Probably better answered by somebody more qualified than me, though. Thank you for it. Oh, Georgie asks, is it normal or okay to have goals and intentions changing daily? Yeah, it's normal. And it's okay. You would hopefully want to get to a place where, you know, the goals and the intentions, maybe they oscillate a lot. And then as you go through the process and you keep doing it, after a section of time, unnameable amount of time, the oscillation gets smaller and smaller and tighter, and you tend to come back to the same things again and again. That's what we would hope for. Stacy asks, how do you get away from a narcissist ex that is extremely tech savvy without him knowing what you're planning? You're saying that because he's tech savvy, he knows what you're planning. You probably need like a tech security expert to help you with that. If you think he's hacked your accounts, your phone, your texting, your WhatsApp, your whatever, you'd need a tech security expert to help you with that. There are ways of cleaning up your social media account, but it's not all of your accounts and your phone. But it's not my field, so you need somebody who's a techie for that. Saint Crane asks, Richard, can you give an idea or a tip on how to get over parentification? Well, really what we're talking about tonight, if you go back to the beginning of what I was saying, and I was talking about summoning the self and figuring out your core values, which was step 1, summoning the self was step 7. These are things that you have to do if you have been parentified, because parentification leads to negation of the self and a negation of your wants and needs, a negation of who you are, a negation of your values, because you were you know, sorry to use such brutal language, but you were used in a way that was not appropriate, and that meant that at the moment of the using, in order to adapt to the scenario, you had to go into self-denial. You had to abrogate the responsibility of being your own person, because it was just, you know, you had no choice. So this video that I've just done is actually full of tips on how to get over the effects of parentification. Hudson asks, if there's a lot of unprocessed emotion in the body, how to effectively release them. If only somebody had come up with a system for doing that and made it freely available for the public to use whenever they like. His name is Richard Gammon. So if you I've got videos here. If you go to my main channel here and search for emotional literacy, you'll find stuff. There is a house in New Orleans they call the Rising Sun. If you go on YouTube, Fortress Mental Health Protection System, it's a separate YouTube channel. There are videos and tutorials on doing emotional literacy exercises there. But yeah, there's a ton of free material I've done online. Just search for emotional literacy. Simple exercise, takes a couple of days to get into it, but once you have, you'll find it inside of a few months of using it. If you use it daily, inside of a few months, you'll find your ability to process emotions is dramatically improved. Thanks for the question, Hudson. Mariam says, can we misclassify the abusive behavior of our parents as normal? Oh, it's normal to misclassify the abusive behavior of parents as normal. It's very normal. In a sense, that is what governments can do to their people. And it was defined as hypernormalization. So it just becomes the new normal. When you're a child, however, there is no new normal. There is no hypernormalization. That is normal. That's all you know. You don't know outside of your own house. You probably won't know until you're an adult. You probably won't know until you're in a relationship with somebody else as an adult, and then you go back with them to their house and see how they were treated. And then you'll start to be like, oh, wow. Yeah, the environment I was raised in was nothing like this. And then slowly over years, you'll realize that your sense of normal is not other people's lived experience of normal at all. NB asks, do women have shadows? Why are you laughing, Thomas? No, women are born pure. They're shadowless. Boys are made of slugs and snails and puppy dog's tails. And I can't remember, what did they say girls are made of? Sugar and spice and all things nice. So they have no shadows. So women don't have to worry about shadow work. That's a joke, by the way. April asks, how do you honor the feelings you come across when doing shadow work? The emotional literacy exercise helps. On the Richard Grannon main channel, I proposed 2 months ago an emotional validation exercise. So if you go to the search bar on the main channel, put in emotional validation, you basically, you open up the doorway to doing emotional literacy by acknowledging that you feel a feeling and saying it's okay. I feel this. I'm not sure what the feeling is. If you can't identify it verbally, you can say what it feels like somatically. And then you can look at that and you go, it looks like it might be irritation, it might be anger, it might be sadness, it might be jealousy. I'm not sure what this is, but I'm having a feeling and it's okay. It's okay for me to feel a feeling. It's okay for me to have an emotion. April goes on to say, I find myself thinking I'm just wallowing in self-pity. That would be typically a hyperactive, toxic superego. So there's a part of you that's supposed to, it's like a inner parent that's supposed to guide you away from bad things and towards good things. But if we were raised in an environment where our parents didn't do an amazing job, the superego, instead of guiding you towards the good and away from the bad, just criticizes and blames you constantly. I have a course that helps with that. It's called Heal the Superego. It's available from SpartanLifeCoach.com. But if that inner voice is very strong and very negative, you are going to have to do some quite specific work on that for it to improve. Lisa asks, what role does gratitude take in increasing our opportunities for individuation? Gratitude is just the right attitude to have for all of life, every day. It will make you less emotionally dysregulated. It will make you less stressed. You'll feel happier. You won't get the anxiety and the depression as strongly. You'll still get them. But if you're living with a discipline of remembering to be grateful for all the things you do already have, it just makes life an awful lot easier. In terms of the shadow work is probably not an individuation as a part of shadow work. If you're feeling good, then shadow work and individuating is going to be easier. But I don't think there's a direct. I don't think gratitude is necessarily going to increase the opportunities for individuation. It will just make it an easier process overall. Daisy is change. Well, we all know now what Daisy is. She's change. What is the best way to self-parenting? How do I start? I want to change. I just need direction on how to start. Self-parenting is not massively a big. It's not really language I would usually use. So it's not a big part of what I talk about. I do talk about it somewhere. I think for me, and there's different ways of approaching these problems. There isn't just like one solution. This isn't dogma. It doesn't come down from the mountain with tablets written by the finger of Yahweh himself. In my humble opinion, I would recommend just focusing on being an adult. Don't worry too much about the parent-child dynamic. Self-parenting implies that you have an inner child. Inner child is a useful concept, but it's not front and center for me. Inner parenting is no longer a front and center concept for me. You living your life as a responsible adult, claiming as much agency and sovereignty as you can for yourself, is front and center for me. There are things that I suspect if we prioritize, a lot of other stuff falls by the wayside and we don't have to do any work on it. And this would be one of them. So prioritize being an adult, claim as much agency as you can, set your intentions, move in the right directions in accordance with your values, and you'll find life gets easier. Last question of the evening. Here we go. Being beauteous. How to find like-valued people, new friends, once you have sorted yourself out. Any tips? Nothing that wouldn't be completely obvious. You know, if you have a very strong sense of who you are, and then you start pursuing based on the 7 tips that I gave you at the beginning of the video, you start focusing on what you like and what you want, and you start pursuing your purpose in accordance and in congruence with your values and with your intentions, you will find yourself running into new people. They'll come into your life, but also you'll be behaving in different ways. You'll be taking new actions. You'll be going to new places. You'll be engaging in new activities. You'll probably go for a different job, and everything starts to sort of spiral upwards from there. You're doing it, but in my experience, it felt subjectively in my solipsistic little brain in a glass jar somewhere experience, like, hey, new people are just coming into my life who never would have before. But in reality, you know, I was like living in different countries. I was living in Prague. I was living in Ibiza, where I'd never lived before. So of course I was running into new people. But subjectively, I was like, isn't it amazing when you do this work, new people show up? Maybe the law of attraction is real. And I was like, no, idiot, you're living in a new place. You're doing new things. You're sending out signals all the time, whether you want to or not, to the world, to the people in it, about who you are, what your boundaries are, the level of vitality you have, whether how much on purpose or off purpose you are. We give away tons more information than we think we do. We think we're so slick and so cool with hiding our vulnerabilities and our insecurities, but we're far more transparent than we think. When you do this work that I've advocated here tonight, you'll offer a different signal. There'll be a different, if you like, vibrational frequency, but it's actually signals. You're offering different signals to the world, and you are unconsciously making new, tiny micro decisions every second you're alive. They're completely new. They lead to bigger decisions. They lead to acts of bravery where you do new things in new ways, and it takes a lot of courage and resilience to do that. And then through doing the new things, you're effectively, I don't mean this in a woo way, I mean it in a psychological way, you're living in a new reality. Literally, you're not doing the things you used to do. Think about how much of your life is repetition and how much of your life you live unconsciously. If you start doing new things, you're no longer repeating by definition. And in order to do new things, you tend to have to be more conscious than you could have gotten away with by doing things by habit inside of your comfort zone in the past. The future has risk in it. The past is done. Couldn't be safer than that. But the future is full of risk. As we learn to pilot this craft more effectively, we can learn where the opportunities are, and we can learn to lean into the risk at our own level. Only as much as we're comfortable with. We only have to take on as much danger and new opportunity as we're comfortable with. But that's where the real growth is, outside the comfort zone. I think we're done. Thomas, thank you very much for tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for showing up. I really do appreciate your time and your attention. Please like this video, subscribe, and write a lovely comment. And in that comment, I would like you to put an emoji of a dolphin, because I wanted to write finding your purpose, and I wanted to write porpoise next to it, but I thought that was childish, so I didn't. And I wanted to do a dolphin emoji. So please compensate Freudianly for my impotence at being able to put dolphins out there by putting dolphins in the comments. Thank you very much, and I look forward to speaking to you soon. Cheers. Nasklane.